Welcome, bienvenue tout le monde, everybody, to this year's Remembrance Day ceremony. Today, as a nation, we are gathered to honor the soldiers, men and women, who have fought and suffered for the safety of our country, our communities, and our citizens. Will everybody please rise and remove their hats for a national anthem?
War happens every day for years on end. Canadian soldiers pour blood, sweat, and tears into keeping our country safe and keeping the freedom we have today. As a Canadian medic once said, democratic Spain must live. After hours and hours of battle in the Spanish War, many soldiers received blood wounds and needed critical attention. In 1936, after leaving his medical practice in Montreal to join the Republican force, where Dr. Norman pioneered the blood transfusion to use to save thousands of lives. Philip Gibbs on the condition of war. There were screams of German soldiers. Terror shrieked as the flash of light in their eyes, black faces above, bayonets already red of blood. It was butcher's work. 30 Germans killed.
Dans une note différente, le fantassin Richard Rogerson dit sur le battre de Vimy Ridge après avoir vu la mort de son ami. Une fois que j'ai tué mon premier aliment avec mon baïonnette, mon sang était rouge de chaque aliment que je ne pouvais pas attendre avec mon baïonnette. J'ai dit, je pense plus que tuer des lapins en comparaison après que ça.
There was lots of torture and miserable events that happened during the war. We tried to make his life miserable. Arthur Currie, 1919. The lives these soldiers dealt with was indescribable and cannot be put into words. James Owen, a 16-year-old private before the attack on Vimy Ridge, is quoted as saying, "I don't want any prisoners. Remember, no prisoners. They will just eat your rations." As Aaron Kilborn says, the dead soldiers' silence sings our national anthem. For days on end, soldiers would dig trenches, salvage food, and fight for their lives. A veteran officer, Douglas MacArthur, quotes, "In my dreams I hear again the crash of guns, rattle of musketry, the strange mournful mutter of the battlefield. These soldiers risked their lives for our freedom, but the memories of the battle will live with them for the rest of their lives."
Caleb will now be reciting In Flanders Field, written by John McCrae.
Thank you, Caleb, for reminding us of those impactful and touching words.
In Flanders fields the poppies blow between the crosses row on row that mark our place, and in the sky the larks still bravely singing fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe, to you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields.
We now welcome Isabelle Bergeron to now play John Lennon's Imagine. We are gathered here to commemorate the fallen soldiers that we have lost on the battles. Tyler and Aaron will now speak to us in a deeper aspect.
Every year on the 11th day of the 11th month, we have the privilege of gathering together as a nation to commemorate the sacrifices made by the brave men and women who gave up the freedom to give us ours. Not a day has passed in over 200 years without some form of war on earth. Political, civil, territorial, and religious-based war is a part of the everyday lives of many people around the globe. 101 years ago today marks the end of World War I, the war to end all wars. Unfortunately, the peace agreement that came from this war was only temporary, as not a breath has been taken before 3 new wars emerged, followed by the whole world being upheaved once again 20 short years later when World War II began.
We join together on this day not only to remember the men and women who fought for our freedom in World War I, but also remember those who have fought for us since and continue to strive towards the goal of a more peaceful world today. Since World War I, Canadians have fought in World War II, the Korean War, Afghanistan, and served as peacekeepers in many other conflicts across the globe. Decade after decade, this has been the history of Canada since its birth as a nation. Our values require enforcement.
Although Canada has played an instrumental role in so many hostilities over the years, our generation is still greatly removed from our history and often takes the privileges and freedom today we have for granted. Many do not appreciate that we would not have what we have today if it was not for the men and women who risked their lives for our nation. Being that so many of us have been protected from the effects of war, it can be difficult to put ourselves in a thankful frame of mind.
It is important that we make a genuine effort to turn our hearts and minds towards a state of remembrance and show our respect for the lives of those who sacrificed their future so our future could be free from tyranny and unjust suffering. Honor those who gave their lives fighting to defend the lives of those who could not fight for themselves. Reflect on the dangers of unchecked ideological possession that gave rise to the horrors of fascism and communism, resulting in the deaths of tens of millions of innocent people. Imagine the grief of the fathers and the mothers who lost their sons or daughters, and the children who lost their parents. Think about the fact that these were young people who lost their lives. Most were just graduating or recently out of high school when they left their homes and families to join the fight, never to return. Remember that the freedom we enjoy today was not free. It was paid for with the lives of our best young people, and that cost should never be forgotten.
On this day every year, we take the time to give special tribute to those who served and continue to serve our country.
One moment a year is not adequate enough to honor and pay our respects to the men and women who fought for our freedom.
For the medical staff who nurtured the soldiers back to health and took care of them.
And for the families at home who stayed strong and courageous despite the constant worry and uncertainty surrounding the well-being of their loved ones.
We would not be where we are today without them, and we cannot let ourselves forget that.
From the bottom of our hearts and the very core of our souls, thank you. Let's make the moment count.
Please rise for a moment of silence, the last post, and the revel.
Thank you, everybody, for your time.